Disappearing without a trace in a world as mapped and monitored as ours can feel inconceivable, yet it happens far too often, especially in national parks. These vast, isolated landscapes, while picturesque and peaceful, are also home to some of the most unsettling disappearances. Each case tells the story of someone who ventured into the wilderness, only to be swallowed by it, leaving behind unanswered questions and broken families. Over the years, investigators have scoured rugged terrains, employed state-of-the-art technology, and enlisted hundreds of volunteers. But sometimes, all they find are the remains of an unsolved mystery. Let's delve into 10 of the most puzzling cases where individuals vanished seemingly without a trace in America's national parks. Sam Dubal. In October 2020, Sam Dubal, a 33-year-old doctor and avid outdoorsman, set out for a solo overnight hike on the Mother Mountain Loop in Mount Rainier National Park, a trail known for its beauty and its challenge. Dubal was no stranger to wilderness adventures. He was well-equipped, physically fit, and had completed hikes of similar difficulty before. However, on this particular trek, something went terribly wrong. Dubal's last known contact was on October 9th, when he texted his family. After that, silence. When he failed to return, search and rescue efforts began immediately, but despite the use of helicopters, drones, and infrared technology, there was no sign of him. For over a week, teams combed the trail hoping to find a clue, perhaps a piece of gear, clothing, or any indication of what happened, yet nothing surfaced. The terrain around Mount Rainier is unforgiving, with steep slopes, dense forests, and rapidly changing weather. But even in such conditions, the complete lack of any trace was unsettling. Was it a fall, a sudden medical emergency, or something else entirely? Dubal remains missing, his family left with no answers, just the haunting knowledge that he walked into the wilderness and never came out. Connie Johnson, a seasoned wilderness ranger, had spent her life in the mountains. Her knowledge of the terrain, survival skills, and deep connection to nature made her disappearance in October 2018 all the more baffling. Johnson had been camped with a hunting party near Fog Mountain in Idaho's rugged wilderness. When the group split up for a few days, Johnson decided to remain behind, a choice that would lead to her vanishing without a trace. Her dog, Ace, a loyal companion, stayed with her. Days later, when her group returned, they found no sign of Johnson. Soon, an extensive search was underway. Helicopters scanned the dense forest, and ground teams covered miles of rocky, difficult terrain. Strangely, after weeks of searching, Ace was found alive, though emaciated, near the original campsite. But there was still no trace of Johnson. How her experienced instincts failed her that day, and why her dog survived when she did not, remain questions that linger in the minds of her family and fellow rangers. James McGrogan. In March 2014, Dr. James McGrogan, an avid skier and backcountry enthusiast, joined his friends for a splitboarding trip near Vail, Colorado. The group planned to stay connected with each other via walkie-talkies. McGrogan, who had all the proper gear, food, water, and a GPS, somehow became separated from the group. When he failed to meet them at their agreed checkpoint, concern set in. Search efforts began immediately, as his companions knew he was well prepared. Days later, his body was found miles away from the trail, in a location that defied logic. McGrogan's GPS would have prevented him from veering so far off course, and the route to where his body was discovered would have taken him through some of the most treacherous terrain in the area. Even more puzzling was the state in which he was found. His equipment, including his helmet, was nowhere nearby. How McGrogan ended up so far from his intended path, and what happened in those crucial hours, remains one of the most confounding mysteries of the Colorado backcountry. Geraldine Largay. Geraldine Largay, known as Inchworm on the trail, was a 66-year-old experienced hiker when she set off on a long section hike of the Appalachian Trail in 2013. On July 22nd, after texting her husband from a remote section in Maine, she vanished. Despite a massive search involving hundreds of volunteers and law enforcement personnel, no trace of her was found until 2 years later. Her body was discovered by surveyors less than 2 miles from the trail. In the months before her death, Largay had become lost in the dense Maine wilderness. Her journal, found alongside her remains, detailed her final tragic days. She survived for nearly a month, hoping for rescue, but ultimately succumbed to the elements. Her death raised difficult questions about survival and rescue in remote areas, highlighting just how easily one can become lost, even in relatively populated regions. George Penca. George Penca was a 30-year-old man enjoying a group hike with his church on the Upper Yosemite Falls Trail in Yosemite National Park in 2011, when he suddenly fell behind. It was a strenuous hike, but nothing particularly dangerous for someone of Penca's fitness level. When he didn't meet the group at the summit, concern spread quickly and a search began. Despite the thorough investigation and search efforts, Penca disappeared without a trace. There was no evidence he had fallen, no personal belongings were found, and no one had seen or heard anything unusual. The abrupt nature of his disappearance has led many to speculate, but no definitive answers have been provided. Yosemite's rugged cliffs and deep ravines make it a dangerous place to search, but after years of investigations, the complete lack of evidence has left Penca's case as one of the park's enduring mysteries. Melvin Nadel. Melvin Nadel, a skilled hunter, was with two friends on a trip to the Santa Fe National Forest in September 2009 when he disappeared. Nadel had stepped away from the group to find a good hunting spot and never returned. His friends assumed he would make his way back to camp, but when he didn't, a search ensued. Nadel was a seasoned outdoorsman, familiar with the terrain, so his sudden disappearance shocked everyone. Weeks of searching the dense forest yielded little. Only one of his gloves was found. With no evidence of foul play or animal attack, his friends and investigators were left to ponder what could have happened in those critical moments. Nadel's disappearance remains one of the most bewildering missing persons cases in New Mexico's wilderness history. David Gonzales. David Gonzales was a 9-year-old boy enjoying a family outing in the San Bernardino National Forest when he disappeared in 2004. After asking his mother if he could run ahead to the car, Gonzales vanished within moments. His mother and the family quickly realized something was wrong and began searching, but David was nowhere to be found. Panic set in, and authorities were called, leading to an extensive search of the area. Despite searchers combing the forest within minutes of his disappearance, no trace of the boy was ever found. What makes David's case especially confounding is the speed at which he seemed to disappear. In a matter of moments, he had gone from being within sight of his family to vanishing entirely, leaving his family and search teams baffled. John Devine. John Devine, a 73-year-old experienced hiker, set out on a solo hike in Olympic National Park in September 1997. Devine had hiked extensively in the area and was familiar with its challenges, but this time he never returned. A massive search was launched, but it was hampered by bad weather. Heavy rain and fog made the already treacherous terrain even more dangerous for searchers. Despite weeks of searching, including aerial sweeps, no trace of Devine was ever found. Olympic National Park is notorious for its dense forests and steep, unforgiving landscapes, but Devine's complete disappearance, despite his experience, remains a point of intrigue. His case is often cited as a testament to how even the most seasoned hikers can become overwhelmed by the wilderness. Ruthanne Ruppert. Ruthanne Ruppert, a seasoned hiker, went missing in Yosemite National Park in 1996 during a solo hike. She was last seen on a trail she had walked many times before, but when she failed to return, search efforts were immediately initiated. For years, no trace of her was found, until hikers stumbled upon her backpack deep in the wilderness, far from her intended route. Despite this discovery, Ruppert herself has never been found, leaving her fate unknown. Ruppert's case adds to the growing number of hikers who have vanished in Yosemite, a park known for its beautiful but dangerous terrain. How she strayed so far off course, and what ultimately became of her, remains one of the park's unsolved mysteries. Thelma Pauline Melton. In September 1981, Thelma Pauline Melton, a 58-year-old woman who was very familiar with the trails in the Great Smoky Mountains, set off on a leisurely hike with two friends. Melton had walked this path many times before, a gentle trail called the Deep Creek Trail. As she and her friends hiked, she began to walk ahead of the group. What started as a casual distance soon became a mystery, as Thelma vanished from sight and was never seen again. Her friends were not alarmed at first, thinking she had simply gone ahead and would meet them at the campsite. However, when they arrived and found no sign of her, panic set in. Search and rescue teams quickly mobilized, covering every inch of the trail and surrounding areas. Despite Melton's familiarity with the region and the relatively easy terrain, the search yielded nothing, No clothing, no footprints, and no signs of struggle or distress. The only thing left behind was a question. How could someone disappear so suddenly in such a familiar, non-threatening environment? Adding to the oddness of Melton's case was her medical condition. She had a history of health issues, including high blood pressure, and would not have been able to hike difficult terrain or cover long distances quickly. Given these factors, investigators were left puzzled as to how she could vanish without a trace in an area where she was known to walk regularly. Despite extensive searches and ongoing investigations, Melton's disappearance remains one of the Great Smoky Mountains' most perplexing unsolved cases. Conclusion. These 10 cases of disappearances in national parks highlight the unpredictable and often unforgiving nature of wilderness. From seasoned hikers to children and doctors, the people who went missing were no strangers to the outdoors, yet they vanished without leaving much, if any, evidence behind. Whether due to accidents, medical emergencies, or perhaps unknown forces of nature, these cases leave behind haunting questions. How could experienced hikers become lost so easily? Why were some found in places far from their intended route, while others were never found at all? These are questions that investigators, search teams, and families are still asking, years or even decades after the fact. What we do know is that the wilderness, while beautiful, can be treacherous, and it does not always yield its secrets. For those who venture into these remote landscapes, it serves as a reminder that nature can be both awe-inspiring and dangerous. For the families of those who have disappeared, the search for answers continues, but closure remains elusive. Thank you for spending time with us through Spookscope today. Feel free to share your knowledge and wisdom in the comments section, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share it with your friends and family. Until next time, my dear spooker, stay curious.